to Expertisor Academy. Today we're getting into the AutoCAD fundamentals training playlist. So in this one we're going to see a bit more into AutoCAD and then see how to do the basic drawing creation using some of the basic tools. So just go through the introduction lesson, guys. If you want to get a bit more understanding of the user interface of AutoCAD, it's better to get the introduction lesson one more time done if you need it. Okay, let's quickly get through this version and then let's see how to create a file and then create some basic elements in here. So first thing is you go to your application menu and then you click on new and then you can choose drawing, and then it tells you list of templates that's available. So right now I have Civil 3D installed, so by default it gets to the template folder and it shows all the Civil 3D templates. If you want AutoCAD templates, you can go into the AutoCAD templates, and most cases you will be using AutoCAD.ddbg, AutoCAD.ddbg. So that's one of the templates, and apart from that there is a whole bunch of other templates that you can use it as well. So there is no harm in using anything specific. So this is by default the standard templates. So you click on open, and what happens is it opens the DWT file as a DWG. So that's like it makes a copy and then opens as a DWG file. But remember, this file is not saved anywhere. So if you close it, this will pretty much discard this file. So this file just temporarily in the memory. So you need to save it. Every time AutoCAD saves a file with the name AutoCAD drawing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's just a temporary name. So don't think that the file is saved. So if you try to close it now, generally it closes it and discards the file. All right, so you need to save this one. All right, so next one is once you create the file, let's first of all set the drawing space to get started drawing. All right, so this is called a grid that you see in the drawing grid, and this grid is used if you're going to draw something which is like, say, it goes from one node to another node and you want to follow the lines to be perfectly horizontal and vertical and things like that. And so electrical engineers, a lot of these people generally use these ones. So if you don't need it, you can go to the status bar and then you can turn off the grid. So you can turn it off. And another option is you can use F7 to turn off the grid, or another one is Control G to turn on and off the grid. Okay, so three options. And so let me turn it off. I hate it. All right, so next is we got the background space. So how do we set the background color? So this color, some people tend to keep it in white, some people tend to keep it in black, gray, however you want it. How do we change that? So now if you right click on your AutoCAD drawing space, and you got an option called AutoCAD Options. Another way of going here is you can type in OP or options in the command line. It takes you to options the same way. And then in AutoCAD Options, I'll go through separately on some of these tiny details here. So just quickly running through some of the basics here in AutoCAD Options. First is under the files, you got a whole bunch of files which is needed for AutoCAD to keep running. And so the first one is a support file path. This is where it gets all the icons, the tools gets loaded, and some of the libraries for Civil 3D AutoCAD, the CUI interface, a lot of these things, the support files is pretty much, it needs it for everything to work properly. Okay, and also it loads a default path for your blocks and a lot of these things. If you can also load them. And working support file path, so this is like, say, if you got some plugins that is loaded and some of the blocks, some of the content, and those ones goes into the working support file search path. And then trusted locations, so these are the locations if you keep your plugins, generally it runs without issues, or else it shows a prompt saying that do you want to run this plugin, so it's not part of the trusted location. So you can add multiple trusted locations as well, and then you keep your plugin there, and then when you load it, it doesn't show the prompt. And device driver file, so for now it's like your PDF printer and other drivers if you have, so it generally goes to this location. And project file and search path, you can set something up here, so that's typical, by default goes into that particular path to find something. And then customized files, so this is your CUI, customized user interface, like how you want the ribbon, what all the tools you wanted, and things like that. So this one, so there will be one file that says main customization file, so you can specify it, and whatever you set it here, so this is what it predominantly use it. And if you're using group policies to push through CUI file to all your CAD drafters from a centralized network, then you push it as a enterprise customized file, and that way it overrides everything else, and then pretty much people can't change it. You can lock those settings as well. And custom icon locations. So by default, all the icons which you see here, they come from a particular location. So if you want to add more icons and if you want to create your own buttons, just put some locations, put some icons in here. Or if you want to add another location to have the icons, you can change the location using the browse button. Okay. And help, so this is all the help files. So when you click on this help button here, it just opens these items here. And text editor, by default, when you open a certain file, let's say CUI file or a script file, any of these ones, what all the applications you should use. And print file, so this is like your printer settings, basic printer things. We have a separate chapter on printers. We'll go through these things in detail. And then print support file path, so this tells you the print spooler file location. And so this is like a, you can put the files temporarily stores and things like that. And printer configurations, and then plot style table. So the plot style table, print table, a lot of these ones, when you actually print something, so you can set it to print it to, like, say, grayscale or monochrome CTB. That's basically everything without color. It comes in black and white. So that sort of things. So the plot style settings is basically overrides the pen styles. So we'll see those things when we get into the printing section. So that's basically when you draw something, you can draw it in whatever the color you wanted. And then when you print it, it prints in a particular color shade, and then prints in a particular line, width and thickness and types and stuff. So you can change all those things. All right. And then automatic file save. So you can point it to a temporary location where AutoCAD has got this feature called Autosave. So this Autosave will automatically keep saving the file every 5 minutes and 10 minutes unless and until you are within a particular operation, let's say loading something or refreshing something or things like that. And color book, we'll see these ones as well. So some of these ones are used for getting some colors into your layers and line types and properties and all these ones. So, and then PDF, import PDF image locations. This is not a mandatory feature. So this is like if you go to Xref to import something, you can import it from any location. And then data source location. So this is for the data links. By default, what happens is when you try to connect your AutoCAD table into an Excel sheet, that gives you an option to do the data links. So this is like a default location. It generally goes to that location to find any data links in there. So it stores all the information regarding what table in what drawing is connected to which Excel sheet in which location. Okay, so it stores all that information right up here. And then template settings. So template settings, we have drawing template file location. So this is what happens when I try to open a new drawing file, it takes me to this location. So that is the default location where the template resides. So you can change it if you want. Same with the sheet sets. Sheet sets are for printing, and every time you create a sheet set, they actually get stored in one of these locations. Sorry, this is actually the template for the sheet sets. It gets the sheet set templates here. And then default template file for QNew. And AutoCAD has got two types of new. So one is when you go to the application menu to open it. Another one is you see this little new icon in the quick access toolbar. When you click on it, it opens the default template quickly into your drawing space. It doesn't give you the prompt to go and ask you to pick a particular template. So that is the QNew. And so for now, I have not specified anything in the QNew. So it generally goes for the default ACAD or DDBT. So next one is default template for style for sheet creation. So that's the one. And then tool palettes. So this is the location where the tool palettes are stored. And for now, since I've installed Civil 3D, generally it goes for the Civil 3D default location. And then authoring tool palettes. So the tool palettes itself is a pretty massive chapter, guys. How to create a tool palette, how to create tabs, how to add tools in there, blocks in there, and some scripts in there. So a lot of these things you can add it as well. So we will get into that tool palette as a separate chapter as well. And then log files. By default, AutoCAD produces logs. These logs are not just for application error. So that means when AutoCAD crashes, not just that for that one, it also stores information such as when your drawing is loading, let's say if it's loading from Xrefs and some of the references are missing, and any of those errors, anything that you find, it just keeps logging. So you can go and check those things in there. Action recorder is for your macros. If you're building some action macros, you can get to see the location where it's by default saved and things like that. And if you're generating some generic macros, macros itself is like a cool chapter we will go through, and so those ones generally put into some sort of a Dropbox or something. So because these things don't change for one version of AutoCAD to another version of AutoCAD. This has been there for a while. So if you create something generic to do some basic functions, and if you want to share it with your team, just put into Dropbox so you don't lose them, and everyone can share their own, and then you can use them, increase productivity. Plot and publish log files. So this is one important thing that you should know, because when you do batch plotting, when you're publishing, let's say 20-30 drawings and things like that, and sometimes if some of the drawings not getting printed off because of some of the configuration mismatch, whatever it could be, you should be able to find all the logs here. And temporary drawing file location, this is exactly where the location right now this file is stored. So whenever you create a new file from a template, if you have not saved it for the first time, it gives a name as a drawing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and stuff. So all those drawings you can find it in this location. And then temporary external reference file location. So this is when you do an xref and the files get loaded into a default location. And similarly, texture map path. So this one, Civil 3D version, since it's installed with Civil 3D, it has got Map 3D as well. So the texture map generally goes in here. And remember, this is not your Google Maps or anything like that. This is just texture maps. So Civil 3D, AutoCAD, Map 3D, all of these ones comes with material libraries. They're not as extensive as 3ds Max or anything like that. So it's like very simple ones. But those ones you can find it right into this location. And then web file search path. So these ones we will see it when we're linking some basic links to some of the objects and things like that. And then DGN mapping setup location. So DGN files is like your MicroStation output files are called DGNs, like how you call DDBG files for AutoCAD. So these files for the mapping of DGN files. So these ones I have not really worked much with the DGNs and MicroStations, but I will snoop through this, and then if you have specific questions on it, I'm happy to do a tutorial. It's been a really long time since I worked in DGN files and MicroStation. And yeah, so that's the file tab. Then the display tab. In the display tab, you can set the color scheme to dark or light. I prefer the dark ones. I think these days your mobile phones and Windows and everything goes towards a sort of like a dark interface as a default one. It's easier on the eyes. So next one is display scroll bars and drawings. So this basically adds a scroll bar right here. You can see it. That's a scroll bar. So I generally ask people to, for new people who are starting with AutoCAD, to turn it off. The reason being is when you start using the scroll bars, it wastes your time, and then you're not going to be really fluent in using AutoCAD, the navigation buttons, which comes with your middle mouse button and things like that. So my suggestion is turn it off unless and until you are a pro, or else you'll be just having the habit of going there since you're not too comfortable using pan and zoom functions. And then resize ribbon icons to standard sizes, and use larger buttons for your toolbars. So these are some of the settings you can use it, like an accessibility options. And show tooltip and number of delays, like say when you keep your mouse over, how much delay you wanted before the tooltip pops up. And sometimes the tooltip doesn't work on all the screens. Sometimes it just stays on the screen. Sometimes it doesn't even pop up. So you might have some issues with that. That's because your graphic card may not be compatible with AutoCAD. So that's one thing. And then show rollover tooltip. The rollover tooltip, what it does is, let's say right now when I keep my mouse over, it shows a tooltip. So the rollover tooltip is it shows an additional tool with some videos and things like that. So that's a rollover tooltip. And then display file tab. So that's these ones. You can see multiple files that's been open. And layout elements. So we have display layout, model layout, which is like these ones. So this is another thing. People get a little annoyed. So when you click on this one, it's gone. So people get a little scared of, okay, how do I go there? So it's not even there. So that's reason is this was unchecked. So if you want to scare someone off your office like juniors, you can always try this. So next one is display printable area. So that's in your layout space. It shows a little margin of what your printer is going to print based on the default printer that you have selected. So you know what to keep within the printer area. So and then Create viewports and layouts, yes, of course, easy. And then next one is display resolution. So this one is a really useful command. So arcs and circle smoothness. Sometimes what happens is when you draw a circle, it might look like a polygon, and typically AutoCAD itself doesn't have anything as circle. So everything you look at as a circle, if you just keep zoom, and it looks like a polygon. So it's just too many lines joined together to make it look more smoother. So right now the smoothness value is 1000. That means every time you create something, it's got 1000 lines to create it. So you can make it to, I think the top most value is 22,000, and then 20,000. And then your circles and everything look really smooth. So that's it. And then segment in a polyline curve. So by default, when you create a polyline curve, this one is different from your regular curve. So this is actually a polyline curve. So when we go into polylines, we'll check this one. So how many segments it's going to have by default. And render object smoothness. So you can increase these values, decrease these values, and this basically the renderness, just to say how smooth the lines is going to be and things like that. And contour lines per surface, and this one is also for the object rendering and things like that. And display performance, pan and zoom with the raster and OLE, and so some of these functions you get to see it when you use with some map 3D functions, which I will go through when we do some map 3D tutorials. So that's for a lot of large data when you're scrolling and using with raster images and map data and things like that. And crosshair sizes, so this is what makes your crosshair bigger and smaller. So the crosshair is your cursor. And then fade control, your XREF fade control is set to 50%. That means when you load something as an XREF, it shows as if it's like a background with some transparency to it. So it's sort of a bit dimmed. So it doesn't fall on the face, and so you're not able to draw your new lines and stuff. And then open and save. By default, you're saving as AutoCAD 2018 DWG file. You can choose an older version of AutoCAD format as well, DWG format as well. And then maintain visual fidelity for annotative objects. So control whether the drawing is saved with visual fidelity. That's basically so when you save it, it creates a thumbnails and things like that. I think it's for that one, so I have not really used this function. Maintain drawing size compatibility. Controls a larger object size limit supports when you open and save drawings. And these things, I have not really seen any visual usage for me. Sometimes I turn it off and on for bigger drawings and things like that. That's basically when I troubleshoot things. When something is slow, I generally turn these things on and off. But as such, it's not for mainstream drafting. I have not really used it, like say a very active phase. And thumbnail preview settings, this is what comes up in your application menu. Remember I showed you you can check thumbnails of your drawings, so that you can set some of these things as well. And then incremental save percentage, so it's like every 50% you complete some work, it just saves it. And then the autosave, so this is by default turned on, and then every 10 minutes it tries to save. Create a backup copy for each save. And full-time CRC is like cyclic redundancy check. It's just basically make sure that when you're saving it, it completes a section and then finishes it, checking for errors, and then go to the next section. So it's like a in Windows we got the CRC error checking. So the same way, when you save something, it just verifies it to make sure that the file is not getting corrupted or something. Maintain a log file, so it keeps a log file of all the autosave functions. And some of these log files, it's better to turn it off because it just keep logging files and you're never gonna clear it. People forget about it as well, so that's the thing. And then digital signatures, we'll see that. So it's pretty much we don't have any digital signature on this machine, but you can have some digital signature applications like Adobe or something like that installed, and then you can create a digital signature and you can assign it here. So this is for when you applying a stamp seal onto your title blocks and things like that, you can use a digital signature. And then file open, number of files in the recently used files. So that's when in the application menu it shows 9 files. You can add it more or less. display full path in the title as well. This will be a little handy, so when you're looking at it, it shows which location the files are from. Application menu shows number of recent files is 9, and then the external reference. So it's a type of load, how you want to load the external reference. Object ARX application, so it's like your plugins, demand load, and proxy images for custom objects. And so these are some of the plugin how you want to load and things like that. And plot and publish, it shows what is the default printer. You can change to whichever the default printer you want it. And then add or configure plotters. So this is where you can go and add your plotter drivers and things like that. So this location, what you see here, is comes from the file settings. You know, one of the file settings where we got the plotter settings, so drivers. So that's where it comes from. Okay, so it stores as a file called PC3. And then plot to file. So this is a location where it's going to save. So when you're plotting it as a PDF file or PNG or whatever the format, it could be TIFF or GeoTIFF, whatever. So it's going to save into that location. And background processing options only for publishing, and it's not for plotting. So they both are a little different. So plotting is pretty much straight away you're doing it, and publishing is you generally put into the background. It does quite a lot of files and layouts and things like that. We'll go through that in detail. Okay, so next one is plot and publish logs. It just saves the logs of what's happening with all the items that get published and plotted. And auto publish, so that's every time you save something and some of the settings that you can give, and based on that it just keeps updating the plot PDFs and things like that. And when you're changing the plot device, keep the layout paper size if possible. So that's like without changing the properties of the layout space. So that's when we go into the layout tutorials and printing tutorials, we'll see that. That's a pretty vast chapter as well. And print spooler alert. So some of these alerts get logged into your system event viewer. So if I go to event viewer VWR dot, I think it's MSC. So in here you should be able to see some of the application based logs as well. So those logs comes up here as well. So anything that you're interacting with the standard Windows drivers or application level entities, so you will see those ones. Only plot quality. So what is the default plot quality? So you can set these ones when you print it from the layout screen as well. And then plot stamp settings. So you can add a stamp whenever you plot it. Plots table style. So by default it comes with a whole bunch of table styles. So these ones you can also configure, create your own, clone it and things like that. So it's called CTB files. And so by default you can set it to monochrome CTB. So that means everything that they print by default goes into a grayscale. That's like black and white. System. So now the first thing is the graphic performance. So you can select this option, and the very first thing that you need to know is hardware acceleration. So what is hardware acceleration? So you are using an AutoCAD application, of course you will have a graphic card, right? So these graphic cards sometimes may not be compatible with the latest version of AutoCAD, or even the current version that you use may not be compatible with the newest card that you get. So for that you need to get into AutoCAD website to find compatible graphic cards. I'll show you that later. And so this is the graphic card which I have, and so that's the hardware acceleration is turned on, and all these functions are turned on. So you can turn it off. When you turn it off, the hardware doesn't do the processing, the graphic card doesn't do the processing. So the software rendering engine will process all the things. So that is the thing. The virtual device is a DivX, a DirectX, and the driver, the physical hardware is the graphic card, NVIDIA graphic card. Okay. So you can also turn these things on and off from here. So you see the status bar, there's a little icon here. So this is what you turn on and off the graphic accelerator quickly. Okay, so then current plotting device. So that's, I don't have any current plotting pointing device. Pointing device. So pointing device is your mouse. So that's basically it. So if you have these special mouses that comes for drafting and 3D animation and designing and things like that. You can use that one as well. So the good thing is if you apply it here, you don't have to change your mouse for Windows. The Windows will work with the regular mouse, and you can have an additional device just within AutoCAD alone. And touch experience, ribbon model. So this is for the tablet, I think. Never used this one. I think rest of these ones are balloon notification is what you see when the XREF is loaded, reloaded, and things like that. Security options. This is a trusted locations where the plugins are from, and you can have high, off, and things like that, so you don't see a prompt. And user preference. So some of these things are really helpful. So one is double click editing, and another one is short menu shortcut menus in the drawing area. Okay, this one is useful. So this is a right click customization. So some other things which I generally keep it is the command mode. So if a command is in progress, right click means shortcut menu. So that gives you the property menus. So another option is you can choose enter. So that means when you right click it, it finishes the command. And insertion scale. So this is user specified, unspecified, unitless. So this what happens is when you insert an extra file, you need to specify what sort of units you're inserting into. Let's say, is it a map for the whole city for comes in kilometers, or is it just a little electronic motherboard which comes in less than 30 centimeters, or is it a microchip which is in less than 1 centimeter? So what sort of unit are we inserting those objects in? So before that we need to set the units for your current drawing, but this is the options you set when you import something into the drawing. Hyperlinks. So display hyperlinks, cursor tooltips, and shortcut menus. So the hyperlinks can be inserted into the properties specific to certain objects, which I will show you. So that's pretty much, if you got an object, you select right click and go to properties, and you can insert a hyperlink to it. And display background of fields. So that's like so these ones I think we will have a separate lesson on fields. So we can create fields within AutoCAD and you can use them. So they used to be, let's say when AutoCAD was the only application, people use it. So now these days we have a lot of smart applications that's in place. So they do a lot more smart work. So next one is priority of coordinate data entry, running object snap or keyboard entry, except scripts, and these ones have not really had much of a use. So this, like, some of the user preferences is like I'll actually show you how some of these things work when you change it, like the dynamic input and things like that as well. So, you know, we get an understanding, but some of these things are very minor and we may never use it, and we may even forget it if you learn it as well. So, like myself. All right. But I need to try these ones to show how these things work. Okay. And then undo, redo, combine zoom in, zoom commands as well. So this is a really good one. So what happens is when you zoom into a location and then if you do an undo, it also zooms out. So not just the edit option, it's not actually undoing the edits. It's also undoing the edits plus the zoom functions as well. And block editor settings. So it's like what is the color you wanted, the constraint color and things like that. So when you get into the block editor, we'll get to see some of these ones. And the line weight settings, default scale list. So the default scale list is based on the template that you load. So yeah, you can choose metric or imperial, and then you can choose that. And that's what you see when you go to your status bar. Okay, and then drafting. So then the drafting, you can turn on the marker. So the marker is like a pick marker which shows like a little box. That's your marker. So auto snap will show a marker right now, and then there is a magnet. So that means when you keep your mouse closer, it just snaps to the marker. And display auto snap tooltips and display auto snap aperture box. So this is all the aperture. This is the marker. And then object snap options, ignore hatch objects. So this is really cool. What happens is when you have a hatch object which has got boxes within multiple boxes, like a floor or something like that, you don't want your mouse to keep snapping to a million boxes that you have in there. So this will ignore all the hatched objects. Trust me, this is really useful. And then auto track, display polar tracking vector. This is really good, guys. So this is like no harm in having this one. This is going to be really cool. And then it just basically gives you a tracker. Whenever you try to draw something straight lines and stuff, it just shows you like a guiding line. And align point acquisitions, automatic shift to acquired. So this is automatic, is good enough. So it displays a tracking vector automatically when the aperture moves over an object snap. So it's like a automatic stuff, which is nice. And drafting tooltip settings. So this is your model view, how it's going to look like. This is how the layout view, how it looks like. You can change the color, the size of the box, the transparency, and all these. By default, I turn off all these features. I never have these dynamic input. They just pain sometimes. Cameras, no. 3D models. So 3D models, some of these things which I would use is displaying the view cube. The view cube is what you see here on the top right corner. So if you don't use it, if you're just drawing only in 2D, and if it's not going to be a big use for you, you can turn it off in the 2D space. So that's gone from the 2D space. And when you rotate it, if you want it to be there, then it will be here. And then if you wanted to just turn it off on all the viewports, you can turn it off on all the viewports. And same with the visual styles as well. So when you turn off visual style from 2D wireframe to 3D wireframe, or rendering or conceptual or something like that, the view cube comes back again. So you can turn it off for all the visual styles as well. And visual style will create 3D objects by viewport. Yeah, of course. So that means every viewport that you create in your layout, you can set a different visual style. And maximum point clouds per drawing. So the latest version of AutoCAD supports point clouds. So how much point clouds will be supported? So that's the maximum number that you see. And selection, so that's a pick box size. You can make it bigger, smaller. And then grip size, don't make it bigger. Sometimes if it's too many grips right next to each other, it's too hard to use them, so it becomes useless. So just keep it as small as possible. And finally we got profiles. You can create your own profile, change all the settings, save it in the profile and save it to your Dropbox, and then every time you go to a new office, you just import it and then apply the profile, so everything is in the way that you want it. So that's your profile. So profile creation, CUI, a lot of these customization, we'll look into the advanced version of AutoCAD. Okay, so that's the AutoCAD options. So this has got a bigger introduction. So I think I still have to do a few more lessons on the basic configurations, and then we'll get into creating some drafting objects. Alright, thanks guys, and subscribe to the channel. If you have any specific questions, just put it onto the comment section.